Welcome to the cutting edge of the global awakening.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex.
Well, it looks like the North Tower of the World Trade Center has just completely collapsed.
The U.S. dollar's status as the preeminent reserve currency is under attack.
This is a mathematical fact. Tens of trillions of dollars are being extracted from the United States of America.
You really want the truth? Then just follow the money.
Welcome to Follow the Money Radio, a broadcast dedicated to your personal, spiritual, and financial liberty. And now, here's your voice of reason in the midst of global chaos, economist and best-selling author, Jerry Robinson.
Greetings to you, friends. Welcome around the world to Follow the Money Weekly Radio. I'm your host, Jerry Robinson, on the web at ftmdaily.com. So glad that you're joining us. Hope you're having a wonderful Saturday, a wonderful weekend. We have a lot of things to dive into. We have so many things to talk about, so we're going to get started right away. We have an upcoming interview, by the way, with Tom Cloud this week. We're going to be talking with him about what happened in gold and in silver. Gold, by the way, gained 1.6% on the week, climbing up to near 1,400, which was a very encouraging sign for gold investors. Silver also rose, but nearly by 4%, briefly climbing above $24 on Friday. So Tom will be here. He's actually in the bullpen warming up, ready to go, and he'll be here to share with us his insights on the week. We'll also be joined by Jennifer Robinson with our Trigger Trade Report, see how our trading went this week, and also Jay Peroni will be here with his investing idea of the week. He's actually going to share an interesting idea with you about how to invest in the demographic issue, the whole baby boom issue. He has a stock that is up over 650% since the crisis of 2008, and he believes it's going to go much, much higher, so he'll be profiling that stock later on in the program. Well, in the markets this week, the Dow closed back above 15,000. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ also both posted gains, but stocks and currencies in India, Brazil, Indonesia, Turkey, they all plunged this week over investor concerns of an imminent reduction in QE3. The Fed, Ben Bernanke, and all the other central bankers are meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming this weekend to discuss a global tapering. They're trying to integrate their efforts as they begin to bring the level of liquidity down in the coming weeks and months. Now, the problem is all of this cheap money that they have flooded into the economy over the last several years has created massive capital inflows into emerging nations, emerging markets. And that is why many of these countries are facing severe crisis. For example, Brazil, the top central banker of Brazil was not actually able to come to Wyoming this weekend to discuss things with the other central bankers as the crisis unfolding in his own country was too severe. So we have a lot of economic problems around the world that are not being reported on quite as much as they should be in the mainstream press. And this is all going to eventually come to a head. Of course, overseas in the Middle East, Syria is in flames as the war drums build in the West to move into Syria to squash the Assad regime. Why? Well, the official reason is because they have used chemical weapons upon their own people. And the report that we saw this week was devastating. Over 1,300 people, men, women, children, lying dead in the streets on film, because they had been gassed with chemical warfare. It's a very sad, very, very sad report. And yet, Syria denies that they used chemical weapons, despite the fact that the U.S., Israel, and others claim that it was the Syrian government. Russia has also said, in defense of Syria, that this is nothing more than a false flag attack. There are reports that the United States is moving troops into the region underneath the guise of Jordanian troops and Israeli troops. And there was a report that the Syrians did fire, indeed, the chemical weapons on invading troops, and they actually hit the civilian area. There is so much chaos and so much disinformation that's coming out about Syria right now that we don't know what to believe. But you know what's very bizarre is that we are in a situation now because the United States has lost so much credibility, so much trust, not just amongst the world, but amongst its own people, as it spies upon us, as it lies about spying on us. And now, whenever the United States says something, and then Russia counters it and says, no, Syria didn't do it, it was a false flag, the globe throws its hands in the air. Because normally, Russia was the bad guy, the United States was the good guy. But who's the good guy in this insane world today? Who is it? Who is the good guy? Is there a good guy? Or are they all bad guys working towards their own agendas, working towards their own end goals? It's hard to tell, is it not? Well, we have a case in point on the confusion that's inflicting the globe this weekend as we take a look at a report that was put out late last week by the Independent newspaper, that is the Independent UK in Britain. And according to their report, they claim that based upon leaked NSA documents put forth by Edward Snowden, that they can now reveal that Britain operates a top-secret communications monitoring station deep within the Middle East. That one report I read said that it was in Cyprus, but they're saying they can't tell us where it is. That is able to intercept and process vast quantities of emails, telephone calls, web traffic on behalf of Western intelligence agencies. Basically, the British operate this monitoring system, which also is able to gather top secret submarine cables that are going back and forth in the region. It's able to decipher those, crack those, and then actually read those. And then what they do is they take it and store it, and they also share it with the NSA. Why are they doing all of this? Well, according to intelligence officials, they claim that this monitoring station in the Middle East is a vital part of the West's ongoing war on terror with the region, or inside the region. And so when the news report came out saying that there was this top-secret Middle East spying station run by Britain in some undisclosed nation, it sounded like a normal report coming forth from these leaked documents by Edward Snowden from the NSA. But what was so bizarre about the entire report was that it was followed up by a Guardian report with a statement inside from Edward Snowden. And here's what Edward Snowden had to say about this report from the Independent. He said, quote, "I have never spoken with, worked with, or provided any journalistic materials to the Independent. The journalists I have worked with have, at my request, been judicious and careful in ensuring that the only things disclosed are what the public should know, but that does not place any person in danger." He continues, "People at all levels of society, up to and including the President of the United States, have recognized the contribution of these careful disclosures to a necessary public debate, and we are proud of this record." Now listen closely to this next statement. He continues, "It appears that the UK government is now seeking to create an appearance that the Guardian and Washington Post's disclosures are harmful, and they are doing so by intentionally linking harmful information to the Independent and attributing it to others." Do you understand what he just said? In essence, what he's saying is that this report was Britain leaking its own documents in an effort to make Snowden and the Guardian and all of this NSA gate look like it's dangerous. They cannot prove that what Edward Snowden has put out and what the Guardian has put out and the way it's been carefully reported on, they cannot point to a single thing and say this has caused us problems. What they can point at is their lies. They can point at the Director of National Intelligence and say, James Clapper lied before Congress. Now, as to why he's still in office, as to why he's still holding his position, as to why he is still able to have any kind of respect amongst the media or amongst his peers is beyond me. Because you know what? If I walked into Congress and I testified and I lied under oath, I would be in jail right now. And they would have confiscated all of my money by now, I'm sure, in fines and fees and legal fees. But James Clapper simply walks? Or what about President Obama, who says, oh, we don't snoop on any Americans, we never listen to any phone calls or read any emails, and yet we find out that is exactly false information. That is exactly the opposite of the truth. These Western governments have been caught in their own lies, and we do not know how deep this goes. We don't know how deep the rabbit hole really goes. All we know is that this information comes out, and it says there is a global spy dragnet all over the world. And of course, the West tries to deny it at first, and then they begin to admit it slowly and painfully. And it's very painful to see our government, who once had so much support and so much respect, not just by its allies, but also by its enemies. Its enemies did fear and respect the United States, knowing that it did at least stand for something. But now we see that the United States, which has long upheld the ideals of liberty and justice and freedom, does not even try to live up to its own ideals, but instead violates its own principles in the name of national security. Edward Snowden concludes his statement by saying this sentence: "The UK government should explain the reasoning behind this decision to disclose information that, were it released by a private citizen, they would argue is a criminal act." The Guardian newspaper and the Washington Post and Edward Snowden said, "We did not authorize this information to come out." The Independent has never even reported on any of this NSA information. It has never released any kind of leaked document. It has never been involved in this discussion in a meaningful way. And yet now they're releasing this massive report based upon a leaked document that Britain is operating a major spy operation in the heart of the Middle East. Edward Snowden and The Guardian call this irresponsible. These truly are information wars. Your mind is the battlefield. It's unbelievable what we're seeing today, because there is a struggle for the minds of men. And there's a problem, because we have men who are no doubt capable of terrible things. But then we have government, which is composed of many men, many men, who are capable of terrible things. And on top of that, they have vast power and wealth. Have you thought about the full ramifications of this NSA problem that we face? The fact that the NSA is able to listen to every phone call, to gather every email. Pray tell me how you're supposed to fight a lawsuit against a government who is able to hear every single detail about you in any of your communications, and is able to put together a profile of what you like and what you don't like and who your best friends are and what your favorite things are. If you get into a lawsuit with the United States government for some reason, God forbid, how are you supposed to win that whenever the other side has absolute positive control and can hear every single conversation that you're having, even with your attorney over the phone? The system that is being built in America and around the world today with this NSA technology, this global snooping operation, will be turned against the American people. It will be used against the American people. It will be used against the people of the world. And I know that there are some in our audience who think the NSA is just the best thing since sliced bread. They love the fact that the government sticks their hands down their pants when they go to the airport. They love the fact that their phone call is being intercepted, because they never know. They might be a terrorist. There's a lot of people who love themselves some NSA, and they actually believe in the goodness of government. But let's make one thing clear. Those people who believe in the NSA and believe in the work that the United States government is doing around the world as it snoops upon other nations without their consent and snoops upon its own citizens without their consent, those people who believe that this is a good idea are 100% ignorant of history, because the number one exterminator of the human population over the last 200 years has not been terrorists. It has been governments. Our founding fathers knew this principle because they placed safeguards into our Constitution to prevent the tyranny that we see today. Those who understand the history of tyranny can identify tyranny when they see it. And those with eyes to see and ears to hear can see and hear the fact that we are descending into another era of gross government control and tyranny. The only thing that has worked in the past whenever governments have gotten this out of control is to starve them. The American people should demand a national referendum vote to be held on the NSA. I'd like to be able to walk into a polling booth and be able to vote on whether I want the NSA to be able to have access to my phone calls and to my emails. And there should be a little checkbox on that vote that says, I vote to defund the NSA. Why? Why should I have that right? Why should you have that right? Well, where do you think the money comes from to fund the NSA? You think China pays for it? You think that India pays for it? You think that Britain pays for it? You are the funder of the NSA. You are the one that pays the bills for these NSA agents. You're the one who pays the bills for the NSA officials. You are the one that's financing the large, enormous NSA center that is going out into the hills and mountains of Utah that will serve as a data collection center for the entire global data. You are financing that. And you know what's so funny about it? You never even knew you were financing it, did you? It seems as if those who understand the basics of the American Revolution and what our Constitution is based on, it seems as if they would immediately recognize that if the government were doing something covertly and forcing you to pay for it, that would be unconstitutional. The problem is that in the wake of 9/11, as we were scared and concerned and worried, and as anthrax was being sent to the Washington's Capitol, I mean, it was just a huge Hollywood production, wasn't it? Designed to scare the living daylights out of you to give up all of your rights. And so what this government is able to say now is they're able to say, we're not violating any laws whenever we sift through your emails. We've already passed a law for that. Oh, we're not violating any laws when we pick you up off of the side of the road and hold you indefinitely without charges. That's part of the law. You know, Hitler, it is said, never violated a single German law during his entire time in office. Why? Because he had passed all of the laws that he needed to accomplish what he needed to do. So too in Washington, that they are passing laws that do not represent the overall public, nor our best interests, and they are covertly operating, in fact, a simultaneous secret court, the FISA court that operates alongside and autonomously from the Supreme Court. Friends, you better wake up. You better wake up as to what they are doing to this nation. You better wake up. It will not get better simply because more time passes. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. The more time that passes, the more that you, like a frog sitting in the boiling pot of water, are going to suddenly realize that the water is too hot, but it'll then be too late. So now we have Edward Snowden and The Guardian accusing Britain of leaking documents on its own accord and then giving them to their own friendly newspapers and then trying to blame it upon Edward Snowden or The Guardian so as to prove that damaging revelations are coming out from this NSA information dump. I know the government is watching me. I know this. I have analytics. I'm able to see who's on our website at any given time. Now, I don't know who the person actually is. I just know where they are coming from. And we have data that shows us that we are seeing a massive increase from Washington, D.C. We know they're listening to this program. We know they're watching us. We know that. Take a look at the front page of our website. It's nothing but exposing them. That's it. Them and their bankrupt government. Them and their bankrupt policies. Them and their bankrupt ideas. And simply talking about all of this is not enough. If you and I don't provide speed bumps to this fast-moving vehicle that is heading right towards the brick wall, who will? There is nothing wrong with civil disobedience. Violent overthrow? No. Civil disobedience? Yes. But if these tyrannical leaders in Washington experience no speed bumps on the way to their final destination, we will all slam into the brick wall at full speed because they're driving, and sadly, we put them in the driver's seat. So keep your eyes open because I believe things are just about to get very interesting.
Follow the Money Weekly presents your precious metals market update. Here's Tom Cloud.
Well, Jerry, a lot of things beginning to happen that we talked about, and I think we ought to delve into those a little deeper today than we usually do.
Yeah, let's talk about gold and silver, Tom. Before we do, I'm really curious your thoughts on the FOMC minutes that were released this week, especially in light of the fact that the 10-year yield is stubbornly near that 2.9%, hovering near 3%, has a lot of people concerned. Now, you and I think, are of the same persuasion that this QE3 tapering is a bit fairy tale because all of the data, including even the preliminary numbers now on the jobless rate this week, we're seeing all kinds of reasons why the Fed is getting hemmed in and may not be able to taper. What did you think of the FOMC minutes, and what do you think of a potential tapering this year?
Well, I've said all along, as you and I have been in the same corner, that I didn't think there would be tapering. When you go out and mess around and put out untrue numbers like they have, I mean, when you got a man like John Williams at shadowstats.com that used to be in charge of the numbers, he's still doing them the way he always did, and they're far different than what the government is putting out. But I'll tell you something very interesting in my world is even if they had felt the market was going to taper in September, you were not going to see a real big pullback in gold and silver because it had already been factored in. We're now seeing the release of what happened on Wednesday as the week goes on. We've had another jump in both the gold and silver. So even if they had tapered, you wouldn't have seen gold and silver go up like it has, but you would have seen it not go down like some people were predicting. But I've been in the camp you've been in all along. There's no way they're going to come out and start cutting back on the QE3. If they do, it's going to get even worse than it is, that $85 billion, and especially we're seeing how it's affected the stock market, both on the positive side and now the negative side, because like you said, when those rates get up there and break support, I've said many, many times in many, many interviews, the government really doesn't care. If you're investing in stocks, they think you're a risk taker, and they really don't care if you lose 30 or 40%, but they will do everything to protect the bond market. That is the sacred cow. And let me mention that earlier this week, the Fed's purchase of Treasury bills and Treasury bonds and Treasury notes hit $2 trillion of the $17 trillion debt that we have out there. Over 80-something% of this has been accumulated under President Obama's watch, not Mr. Bush. So we now are seeing that people worldwide are not interested in buying our debt, and the dollar has gone from 84.80 3 weeks ago all the way down to 81, about a 5% drop. So, Jerry, I think the world is getting the picture.
Yeah, let's talk about the physical demand and physical supply that we've been hearing so much about gold and silver. You're dealing with it every single day and have been for the last 35 years. What are you still seeing massive constraints in the physical market?
Well, there's two answers to it. Let's talk about gold first. Gold, while it's a little easier to get than silver, I mean, it's a little easier. You can know you're going to get in a few days right now. All eyes, of course, are on the big news early in the week that J.P. Morgan, who's been our biggest enemy, now says they're going to sell their gold depository at Liberty Street in New York that connects by tunnel with the Fed's vault at Liberty Plaza in New York. And this is big news because it may tend to see J.P. Morgan getting out as the partner with the Fed in manipulating the markets, and this is could be some very, very positive news. But on the big end of gold, it is very tight. The country's central banks are buying 400-ounce bars, 100-ounce bars. I'm not in that market, but I do have friends that are. And I think another huge thing, Bill Murphy on his La Metropole Cafe released yesterday that the stalker, as he is known in the trade, the biggest gold and silver trader in the world out of London, moved 100% into gold at 1280 and he went out of silver at $30 and went back into silver last week at $20.56. And since he went back into silver, we've seen it move over about 15%. We've seen it already move in just a week since the stalker put his money back into silver, and now we're seeing a severe silver shortage, especially in Europe, certainly here too. But that's a problem I think is going to get a lot worse in the fall.
Yeah, interesting. I know that silver has had just a massive rise just the last several weeks, and it's been so encouraging to many who are holding silver or who, or you know, most people I think who listen to this program, Tom, are in gold and silver for the long haul. But there will come a time to sell. Obviously, now is not the time, and especially not on these dips. How high, let's reiterate, because we have a lot of new listeners, how high do you expect gold and silver to reach when it finally reaches its peak? What do you expect?
Well, the breakout numbers, it's a guess for anybody. It's what you got to try to do is look at the amount of money being created worldwide, like in Japan, where they're doing a quadrillion yen probably over the next 3 years and quadruple their money supply. We continue to grow ours at over 20% a year. So if you look at it, I think once we get through 2000, and I think it could be as early as this year, it could be the first or second quarter of next year. I think you're going to see once gold gets 2000, it's pretty much going to take off the governor, and we're going to see it start running as people finally realize there is no other solution to the world's financial problems except to have something that every country in the world can agree on the value, and that's gold only, not even silver would fit. I mean, it would help silver, but silver wouldn't fit into that. So I'm looking at the next thing at 2,000 gold, and then probably 2,500 after that, Jerry. It's really a guess right now. We got to see how long it takes and how fast the money is printed. But the key thing is all the regulation popping up around the world. When we see limitations talked about in the euro of a removal of 200 euros a day maximum, and we hear there's less than 20% physical currency in this country to back up, you know, how much you got in the bank. If everybody went to the bank at the same time, you know, we'd all be about 80% short. It's all electronic entry. So all that now is starting to play more important in the market as people even moving physical currency and holding like they would gold or silver, just to have physical currency out of the system if there is a run on the bank or any major bank problem.
Just a personal question, Tom. We've been friends for a long time, and our audience has been listening to you for a long time. I think most people sense that there is something very wrong in the economy, and especially if you take a look at the stock market, it's really manipulated by the Fed, so much so, as are the bond markets and the gold markets. But as someone who's been doing this for so long and has as much experience as you, what else are you buying besides precious metals? What are you doing personally in your own personal plan to protect against what you see coming? Are you focusing upon real estate and gold? Or are you focusing on gold and silver and oil? I mean, what are you focused on investment?
Well, you and I have talked about some of this, Jerry, and I don't mind sharing. I'm kind of open when it comes to questions like that. But besides the gold and silver, where I still hold my largest percentage, I use the USO ETF for oil, and I've done very successful trading in and out of oil. I do like to use an ETF for oil. It's not like gold or silver, and I am very satisfied with my diamonds, and I can take anywhere in the world. I probably have a higher percentage in diamonds than I would recommend to most people, but I've been around diamonds for 38 years, a year before I started in gold and silver, and know that market very well, and they're very portable and can be taken anywhere in the world and sold. I want part of my assets in something like that, and I'm always looking for great deals in diamonds. And I have structured, a fixed income portfolio that my son manages that has a portion, but I have been liquidating most of those lately. I have a few left, but I've cut my exposure to bonds the last 2 months, and then as you and I discussed even earlier today, I have been investing in real estate, and I am selling one of the properties right now. I'm cutting my exposure a little bit till I see what these interest rates are going to do before I move back in fully beside the house that we live in. So I think real estate could have a down period like stocks until inflation does finally show its ugly head at some point, and then I think we're going to see gold and silver and some stocks and real estate all win in the end. But on the way there, I'm being very careful.
I was reading earlier this week, I believe it was the New York Times, very fascinating story about the coming fallout from the increase in interest rates and any kind of reduction in QE3 for Middle Eastern countries. We tend to think in terms of the United States and how, a rising interest rate and a tapering of the QE3 would hurt our economy. But because we're so globally integrated, the Middle East, spanning from Turkey to India, as this New York Times piece put out, is going to be very hurt by increasing interest rates because they have borrowed to the hilt at these cheap rates, and they have tons of dollar loans. So we're not just going to see the fallout in the U.S., we're also going to see the fallout in other countries when it comes to a tapering of QE3. There seems to be so much on the Fed right now, so much pressure on the Fed not to taper based upon all the economic data, that if we get the announcement that the tapering is not coming this year, you already said, and I believe it completely, that this tapering is already priced into the mix. It's already priced into stocks. It's already priced into gold. If we get an announcement that we're not going to see a tapering, is it going to be too late to go out and buy gold and silver right then?
It's not. It even gives you a better reason because now certainly your risk may increase a little bit on volatility, but certainly volatility, the upside has been, even with all the manipulation the last 12 years, until this year, where gold and silver are both still down, you're talking about 17% a year for 12 years, even with the manipulation. There's nothing like that. And, the one thing, Jerry, that we all try to, the ones especially long-term holders that are buying this, like most of our clients are, is, you're going to have people jumping around thinking the stock market's good again. But the bottom line is the root of every problem that caused the 2008 crash is still there. Nothing has changed except the debt has got far worse. And once again, we still know we've got the debt ceiling problem coming next month when they come back in September. I mean, basically, we're out of money again from the 2011 raising of the debt ceiling, and this has to be dealt with by Congress in the next 2 months. And every time the debt ceiling is raised, if it goes from $17 trillion to $18.5 or $19 trillion, gold and silver are going to have quite a move. So anybody listening needs to get the percentage they want in gold and silver purchased probably by the middle of September. We also know historically the last 4 months of the year are the best 4 months, the best 4 contiguous months of the year for the price appreciation of gold and silver over the past 13 years of this bull market.
So if folks listening want to call you, learn more about that, ask you any questions, how can they do so?
Well, they can call me at 800-247-2812. That's 800-247-2812. And if you're still holding rare coins, you probably need to call me too, because you need to be in bullion coins for this very important move that we see coming up. And I can assure you the rare coins are not going to move at the same rate. So if you have rare coins, you should call and talk to me. And same thing, if you have money you want to put into an IRA of precious metals, you should call and discuss that about a precious metals IRA, because they are very popular right now and getting more popular all the time as people are reading a lot of these articles about 401ks and what could happen. So if any of those questions about that, you can give me a call. And if you're not getting our email blast, you should go to ftmdaily.com and hit the precious metals button and sign up. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. But it's we put it out 2 or 3 days a week and try to follow economic trends and specials and buy and sell signals. And it is completely confidential. We don't share the list with anybody.
Hey, Tom. So, Tom, one real quick last question about diamonds. You had brought those up earlier. You sell those as well.
Yeah, I still own the company I started back in 1976, diamonds, and we've had the biggest year we've had in diamonds, probably 10 years this year already. We've had some significant money moved by wealthy investors into diamonds and colored diamonds. We're also seeing a lot of 3, 4, 5 carat white diamonds purchased, and I did that as part of my portfolio. And I'm glad I did, because just in 1 year I'm up over 10%, while gold and silver portion of my portfolio is down this year. My diamond portion is up. So yeah, I like the diamonds. I like the confidentiality. I like the portability. I like the world market. And you get GIA certified stones, you can liquidate them anywhere in the world.
If you're lacking hard assets, give Tom Cloud a call, 800-247-2812, and be sure to sign up for his free email blast that goes out 2 or 3 times a week right there on our website, ftmdaily.com/gold. Tom, I hope you and your family have a wonderful and safe weekend, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, Jerry. Same to you and the listeners.
Hey friends, this is Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly. Recently, we have been receiving many emails from our listeners commenting on the great help they're getting from our precious metals expert, Tom Cloud. Gold and silver are excellent hedges against the growing threat of coming U.S. inflation. Who's your gold guy? Make it Tom Cloud. With over 30 years experience with precious metals, Tom will answer all of your questions. Don't buy your gold and silver through some call center and pay inflated prices. Call my good friend Tom Cloud and speak directly with him and get all of your questions answered. For a limited time, Tom is offering free shipping and insurance on every gold and silver purchase made by our listeners. Call 800-247-2812. And when you do, tell him that Jerry Robinson from Follow the Money Weekly sent you, and he'll throw in that free shipping and insurance on your entire order. Call your gold guy, Tom Cloud, right now for the very best deals on gold and silver coins. 800-247-2812. That is 800-247-2812.
With this week's Trigger Trade Report, this is Jennifer Robinson. We ended the week with 5 trades still in play. None of our holdings sold this week, as we wanted to lock in further gains. However, Sandstorm Gold, ticker symbol SAND, was the latest trade in play, and it was up 5.5% in a single trading day on Friday. Metals continue to shine in our trigger trading portfolio, as the silver mining ETF SIL is up 3.5%, and gold mining ETF, ticker symbol GDX, continues to rise and now stands at a 6.3% gain in the portfolio. 4 trades still have not reached Jerry's trigger price. Trigger trading is a service we offer our FTM insiders, in which Jerry gives a trading idea every single day of the week, complete with trigger price, stop loss price, comments, and status updates every single day. You can learn more at ftmdaily.com/trigger trade. That's ftmdaily.com/trigger trade. I'm Jennifer Robinson, and this has been your Trigger Trade Report.
Jay Peroni, certified financial planner, here with the idea of the week. This week we'll take a look at a stock that should continue to shine as baby boomers continue to retire. This small cap stock is up over 650% since baby boomers started retiring, and guess what? The trend is just heating up. There are over 76.4 million baby boomers. Many of these boomers have either already retired or have begun the countdown. Baby boomers turn 60 every 8 seconds, so the trend will not slow down anytime soon. Think about this. In 2000, there were 35 million Americans aged 65 and above. By the time 2030 rolls around, that number will have doubled. There'll be over 70 million Americans 65 and older. Not only that, but this segment will comprise 20 to 25% of the U.S. population. Now, boomers as a group have accumulated a lot of wealth. They also have potential inheritance from parents, but they have some challenges. They're dealing with aging parents, long-term care issues, as well as trying to put children through college. Most of the individual clients I counsel fall into this baby boomer age bracket. My typical new client is a boomer with most of his accumulated assets in his former 401k, his IRAs, and his home equity. He's used stocks to save for retirement, but now he's really concerned about making these assets last the rest of his lifetime. He's well aware that his investments are the key to his retirement, but he's afraid to make mistakes. He's lived through the crash of '87, the dot-com bust, and most recently the subprime mortgage crisis. So as a whole, many of these boomers are becoming more and more risk-adverse. Now, as this core group gets closer to retirement, there's been a natural shift toward lower-risk investments, mainly fixed income. Many have already begun shifting their portfolios from stocks to fixed-income securities. Investors who get ahead of this trend stand to make impressive gains. There's one company poised to explode as boomers become more conservative with their investments. The company I'm referring to is Market Access Holdings, ticker symbol MKTX. It operates an electronic trading platform that allows investment industry professionals to trade corporate bonds and other types of fixed income instruments. It has over 900 active institutional investor clients and a market share of 12.5%. Here are 3 reasons that I really like Market Access. It has a large cash position with no debt, and it's very solid financially. Number 2, if Market Access becomes the largest liquidity pool for fixed income trading, its market share could double over the next 5 years. Number 3, Market Access's relatively high fixed fee revenue will buffer revenue declines if trading volumes decrease. Market Access, ticker symbol MKTX, is a good buy up to $56 a share. It's part of our Tomorrow's Treasures portfolio. You can learn more at wallstreetrenegade.com. It also pays a 1% dividend. It's a strong pick for a long-term investor who's looking for some income as well as some great long-term growth potential. Again, that one's Market Access, ticker symbol MKTX. Jay Peroni, Certified Financial Planner, is signing off for the Idea of the Week. We'll see you again next week.
All right. Well, Jay Peroni is a CFP Certified Financial Planner, a member of our Christian Financial Advisor Network, and he also manages our very own PACE investment portfolio. If you would like to have a free 30-minute review of your investments with Jay, you can call him at 888-664-6963. That's 888-664-6963. And when you do, be sure to tell him you heard about him on Follow the Money Weekly Radio.
Well, my guest today may just be your new best friend. That is, of course, if you or someone you know is trying to decide which college degree to pursue. Aaron Clary is the author of Worthless, the Young Person's Indispensable Guide to Choosing the Right Major. He's also the author of Enjoy the Decline, Accepting and Living with the Death of the United States. His expertise is in the field of economics, and he's a true believer in liberty. Aaron, welcome to Follow the Money Radio.
Hi, Jerry. Thanks for having me.
It's good to talk to you again. Last time we talked was down in Dallas at the Liberty Mastermind Symposium. What have you been doing since then?
As little as I possibly can. It's summer, and summers are short out here in Minnesota. So I've been riding my bike. I took a motorcycle ride out to Alaska and back.
Wow.
So went through the Canadian, 5,300 miles of the best motorcycle riding you'll ever see.
I bet it was beautiful.
Yeah, I got a little badge so I could prove that I did it. And then did 2 weeks out in the Black Hills before the Sturgis rally. But yeah, just having fun, sleeping in, and enjoying life.
So tell us about your background. I said that you have an expertise in economics. How so?
By accident. I majored in finance back in school, but then ended up working in banking as a credit analyst, and during the housing bubble and subsequent crash, the work switched from that of just looking at financial statements to taking a look at the economy, specifically the housing market. And so I had minored in economics, so I had an academic background a little bit in there before and taught some economics classes at the local community college. But where I cut my teeth was going through things like price to rent, looking at macroeconomic data, putting together models, auditing appraisals, looking at valuations, things like that.
Got it. Okay. And before we talk about your book, Worthless, the other book that you have, Enjoy the Decline, I find the subtitle interesting. Both you and I are of the belief and the persuasion that the United States is toast. I mean, it is bankrupt, no doubt about it, and its future is bleak. But what do you talk about in that book before we move into this other one? What's the point? Enjoy the decline. How do you enjoy the decline?
Well, the book itself is really, I'd say, 60% a psychological book, because what it basically does is tenders the argument or makes the argument that you have to, one, it's like going through grief, or the 5 stages of grief, or the loss of a loved one, because that's essentially what losing the United States is, loss of a loved one. So there's denial, then there's acceptance, and there's grief and mourning, and basically it takes a very realistic but gentle approach, saying, look, here are the facts. This is what's happening. This is likely what's going to happen. And if you don't prepare for this stuff now, you're going to be in an even worse situation than you are today. And then it also, and once you kind of get through that, breaking through the psychology, then it's like, okay, things aren't all that bad, because whereas, you thought that you wanted to become, say, the investment banker or the surgeon and make $600,000 a year, there's nothing wrong with making $25,000 a year and only working 2 hours a day and sleeping until 10. So it does give hope. It's not just, well, we're screwed and too bad. It's, okay, we're screwed, but here are some basic things. Here's a game plan, and here's several game plans you can go, and some changes you can make or pursue in your life. They'll help you get the most out of your life before you pass on.
Aaron, it's spooky whenever we take a look at the psyche or the mentality, the mindset of Americans. As I just saw a story that I thought you would probably be tickled by this morning, and it was the fact that New York City has begun creating loans for the pre-K and daycare type of facilities. And so some of these cost, $35,000 a year to send little Johnny off to pre-kindergarten. And so now they're rolling out loans, instead of student loans, now you can just get a daycare loan. It seems as if the American people it's like they haven't fully got the message yet. It's one of these things where they haven't fully realized the devastation that lies ahead. And I believe that the mental side of it is such a key point. So I'm glad to hear that about your book, that you're tackling the mindset, because if people are not prepared for this psychologically, I think that'll be more bruising than the actual collapse itself. I think the mental anguish that they feel and the absolute shock. Why be so shocked that this is coming whenever you can simply do the math and see that the writing's on the wall? So, Aaron, your book, Worthless, The Young Person's Indispensable Guide to Choosing the Right Major. I think this is a very good book as I thumbed through it. And Jennifer read the entire thing and said it was a fantastic read. But from what I was able to gather from it, you're basically saying that most people who go to college are SOL when they get out, because many people focus on the wrong things. Why don't you just tell us real briefly about this book?
Well, basically, the book addresses the education bubble, and you could draw many parallels between it and the housing bubble. The bubble is being fueled by debt, the mortgages is being fueled by student loans. You're buying an asset that just isn't worth it. Some people are buying more or houses that are $600,000, but today are worth $300,000, and students are buying a $70,000, maybe even $100,000, sometimes $150,000 piece of paper that doesn't generate the income or the rents or the profits to rationalize it. And so what the book does, it's primarily intended for kids going to college, but also their adults. But what it does is it handholds the reader through the different types of degrees and basically says which ones are worthwhile and which ones are worthless. There's an economic segment up front that kind of addresses some basic labor market economics as to why, what's in demand, what's not in demand. For example, one thing I do is I have students, when I've been doing the seminar, and I have them list what they want to buy, and then I have them all list their major. And the stuff they want to buy, none of them are majoring in those subjects to produce those things. They all want iPhones, iPads, cars, whatever else, but they're all English majors, poetry majors, and lesbian, Guatemalan pig studies, for all I know. But then after that economics lesson, it then goes through each major or some of the key major ones, and then on to grad school. And then it kind of, the second half then explains why you have this kind of moral obligation, not just for your own benefit, but for the sake of society, to major in the right thing. Because if you just end up becoming a student loan bum, you're going to become a ward on the state. And in the end, you're not going to produce enough economic production to pay for yourself in life. So it's a little bit how-to, but then a little bit of economics lesson on top of it.
So your chapter on what not to study, I think, probably steps on many people's toes who have degrees in some of the different degrees that you talk about. Name some of the degrees that you think that are worthless, and not just the obvious ones, some of the more non-obvious.
Well, let's go straight to, we'll show intellectual honesty. You're an economist, I'm an economist. I say don't major in economics. That's one where you would think,
I can agree.
It's numbers, it's banking, there's a whole industry out there. But the truth is, you got to get at least a master's, if not a doctorate, to get any kind of serious employment and actually work in your field. You might start as an analyst, you might start as a data entryman, but you're not going to be programming models or working for the Federal Reserve. So that's one of the degrees that isn't so obvious.
Yeah, and you also mentioned business administration, which I think many people would probably, admit that. But how come? Why is business a bad degree?
Because business is common sense. It can be no better highlighted than the MBA bubble, a subsegment of the education bubble. You don't need to get 5 courses in HR and 5 courses in general business management and 5 courses in corporate social responsibility. What you really only need, the only skill that you need to have in business is accounting, because the rest of business is pretty straightforward. It's you want to make money, you got to have a good product. Hey, we got to advertise. So you don't need to major in any one of these subsegments like marketing or HR. About the only thing that is really worth majoring, like I said before, is accounting, or if you're going to go into management information systems, in other words, become the IT guy. But that you could just go to a 2-year college to get a networking certification at Cisco.
Why is it that so many students in America are graduating with a worthless degree? I mean, these are supposed to be our nation's best and brightest, but you claim that the majority of them are graduating with worthless degrees, and you even go so far as to say there are leeches on society. How can that be?
Because they're not producing what we've already lent them $75,000, and now it looks like they're not going to pay it back, a taxpayer guarantee. So, people keep getting upset when I call people parasites or leeches or whatever, or dependent. But mathematically, that's what they are. If you cannot pay back the money you've borrowed, then somebody else has to go and make up that deficit for you. So by default, the person working as a barista, voting for whoever, Barack Obama or anyone that's going to promise to get rid of their student loans, they are leeches. And going on further, they're probably going to consume more in government resources than what they're going to produce or pay into the system, given their lack of skills or their worthless degree. So it's not that these are mean people or bad people. They could even be brilliant people. I used to date the valedictorian at the high school I went to, and she majored in child psychology, and she has not produced, she totally didn't live up to her potential. So whereas the raw talent, the raw material may have been there for this to be the smartest generation, unfortunately, we misled them, you, me, and not personally, but our generation, the generation before us, we did not consider economics. We couldn't tell the kids the cold, hard truth about the labor market, and we just pampered and kissed their little heinies and told them, you go major in whatever you want, you follow your heart, and the money's going to follow, and all these other lies that just have no realistic bearing in the modern day economy.
All right, so for the women in our audience, really pay attention to this question. Aaron, you list several myths about college, which I found interesting. 3 of these myths concern women. Some would read this section of the book and think you're picking on women, maybe you're even against women advancing in the workforce. You claim that the wage gap between men and women is a myth, that women earning the majority of degrees is a myth, and that the all-too-common statement that women are sexually assaulted at college is a lie. Why should females even pick up a copy of your book?
because that is reality. And I'll give you a great personal story. Here's a great personal story. I worked at the U of M Police Department when I went to college. At a campus college program, you had to be a student. And this one gal, unfortunately, was a victim of rape. Okay? Now, if you had followed what the feminists at the U of M campus said at that time, 1 in 3, 1 in 2, whatever, women are going to be sexually assaulted, and men are, and they had all these women spooked. And this girl dated this guy for a while, a while, like second or third date, and not to go into details, but unfortunately was the victim of sexual assault, right? She trusted this guy. They got them worried and freaked out that some guy's going to jump around the corner at noon on a Monday and abscond with them off into an alley, right? This is serious stuff. Now, you can be lied to and be misinformed by the Women's Studies Department of any public university, or private university for that matter, and on that false information, base your safety strategies on wrong data, and therefore, by default, your safety strategy will be wrong. If instead you had gone to the police department and asked them, okay, where on campus shouldn't I go? What should I look out for? What are the psychological profiles? That is going to help prevent women from being sexually assaulted more than any other women's studies department. So what I guess the book, underlying theme here is I am really trying to help you. Matter of fact, more so than anyone else who's claiming to help you, because usually the people who are claiming to help you, all selflessly and altruistically, are doing so for a political and ulterior motive. Right? So to tell someone the truth right off the bat helps them. Another perfect example, women earning the majority of degrees. Yeah, that's true. Women earn the majority of degrees. In worthless garbage, they earn like 80% of the degrees, like in English, and you switch it, and they only earn 20 degrees in engineering. Now, a lot of people, you're being mean, and that's sexist, or that's misogynist. It is quite the opposite. I am trying to prevent women, everybody, but women in this particular case of the book, from wasting 4 years of their youth, and Lord knows how much, $100,000 in their parents' money or student tuition or whatever, for making a horrible investment and a horrible mistake. The issue is whether or not these women and other people who read the book can admit that and say, look, this guy really is trying to help me out, or if they're just going to default to emotion, want to play the victim card and woe is me, and then have their lives down the road really severely screwed up instead of having just paid the $5 for the Kindle version of my book and actually take it to heart to what I said.
All right. So finally, you mentioned one piece of advice in your book that made me do a double take, and you say that young people should join the military and stay in for 20 years. The idea is get out of high school at 18, get into the Army or something like that, enlist, stay in for 20 years, and then you obviously get the benefits. Now, I have a 1-year-old son, and thinking about putting him in this military that's fighting wars of aggression all around the globe, what would cause you to give this advice?
The death rates in the U.S. military aren't that high. Of course, obviously there's the risk that you go to war. But if you look at the majority of people in the U.S. military, they're not on the front lines. They're not combatants. They're basically office workers, just like you and me and everyone else. They just get a heck of a lot of benefits. Now, me personally, that's my own personal advice. If I were Aaron Clarey, were to do it again, I would have gone into the military knowing full well the risk of being put, getting shot and all that. I still would have done that simply because the benefits are immeasurable to any young person. You're not going to get those opportunities or offers anywhere else. You get free room and board, you get free health care, you get free education, you get free food, and then when you have your 20 years in, you get a pension and you can go to the VA. So for me, my personal risk return matrix, if you want to call it that, that's worth it to me. For other people, it wouldn't be. But I believe the vast majority of young people, the military would be worth the risk rate of return. Also, you're not going to be taken seriously until you're 35. That's just the truth. Your capacity, your potential in the private sector or the public sector is just not going to be challenged. In the military, they will challenge you. If you're looking for extra stuff, they got plenty of extra stuff for you to do. So you'll definitely be challenged there as opposed to, working as a barista over at Starbucks Coffee.
The book is Worthless. The author is Aaron Clarey. On the back of the book, it says, buy my book Worthless and read it before you spend 4 years of your youth and $50,000 in tuition on a worthless degree. It may prove to be a better investment than college itself. So, Aaron, where can they pick up a copy of this book?
Amazon's the easiest. You could go Amazon.com, just search Worthless or search my name, Aaron Clarey. All the books will come up, and it's available in 3 formats. You can get it in paperback. You can get it in Kindle. And then if you're like me, you don't like reading but like listening to something on the radio or your MP3 player, it's also available on audio format as well.
Oh, perfect. Before I let you go, I really enjoyed hearing your speech at the Liberty Mastermind Symposium in Dallas a few months ago. And why don't you fill our audience in just a little bit about your lifestyle? You see the American dream obviously turning into a nightmare. You see the writing on the wall. What are you doing to prepare? What's your lifestyle like?
The lifestyle in general could be summarized as minimalism or minimalistic. I've shrunk myself as much as I possibly can in terms of economics. I try to get by on $15,000 a year. Fortunately, book sales have been quite good, so now I'm in a slightly higher income tax bracket. But in short, I try to make as little money as possible. I try to work as little as possible, and I try to have as much fun as possible. So, like I said, I went to Alaska for 2 weeks, drove there and back on a motorcycle, spent 2 weeks out in South Dakota. Tomorrow I'm flying out to Florida for about a week, and I'm going to go to the Bahamas in the meantime. And the way I do that is by keeping expenses incredibly low. I fix my own cars, fix my own bikes, do my own repairs unless it really requires a really good tradesman. Also, I mean, this isn't for everybody, but I don't have kids. That's a huge cost savings right there. And, once you have your expenses minimalized and you don't have this, I got to get a Beamer, or I got to go on some fancy cruise, life gets a lot easier and you can go and play. And so that's pretty much what I do is I just go and live life as much as I can before either the economy collapses or I keel over of a heart attack.
All right, sounds good. Aaron Clary, who is unplugged from the consumption trap, living on $15,000 a year, and has written a book that you probably should read, Worthless, the Young Person's Indispensable Guide to Choosing the Right Major. Aaron, have a good rest of your week, and I sure do appreciate you coming on the program.
Thanks for having me, Jerry.
Well, friends, that brings us to the end of our program. Thank you so much for tuning in and just joining me on this Saturday morning. As always, I want to encourage you to spend some time on our website this week, ftmdaily.com. That's followthemoneydaily.com. There you'll find news, videos, all kinds of information right there on the front page. We also want to encourage you to connect with us on Facebook. We can go to facebook.com/FTM Daily. You can also subscribe to our videos on YouTube, youtube.com/FTM Daily. And as always, I like to leave you with a final thought. I'm reading a brand new book by James H. Billington entitled Fire in the Minds of Men. Very intriguing book, subtitled Origins of the Revolutionary Faith. In the introduction of the book, there is a sentence that struck me, and I'm going to read it to you. Here it is. Both Stalin's and Hitler's terrifying reigns were supported by many otherwise educated people. Thus, the mere spread of education throughout the world is hardly a guarantee against the emergence of new forms of violence and repression. Intellectual ingenuity has so far outstripped moral and spiritual development in our time that it is hard to see how the human race will be able to control the awesome powers of destruction that modern science and technology have put in our hands. And it is so true today, friends. Never before have our people been so educated and yet so immoral. We have education without character. We have education without morals. We have education without values. Education without ethics. It's a dangerous time. Just something to think about. Remember, friends, when you're ready for the truth, just follow the money. Have a safe and prosperous week, and I'll see you right back here next weekend. God bless.